Thinking back at Digital Marketing Troop, from your perspective, what were some of the biggest benefits of the podcast to the business?
John, you made me a believer. I've listened to podcasts. There were a lot, and a lot more than I anticipated before, as we were embarking on the Digital Marketing Troop journey together. One that, as a salesperson by training, and I will be a salesperson until I die, sales enablement really comes up first. Our podcast was really snackable by design, as I know this one is as well. And we streamlined production. We were scrappy when we started. We started by recording conversations with our subject matter experts in our core service departments. Short episodes, 10, 15 minutes tops, that had the promise of having clear topics and takeaways for the listeners. And I think we really delivered on that. Those snackable assets, the editorial calendar was showcasing the unique skill sets of our team and the tremendous results they were driving for our clients in various categories. And we were able to build outreach messaging and marketing nurture drip campaigns around that. I think I underestimated the real value of a podcast to be both in its core form as a podcast, as well as the slice and dice version to fuel sales enablement. That was a significant portion of the value. Another probably atypical one that people don't think of, employer brand and recruitment. You may recall we had several candidates when we were, maybe 30 episodes in, getting our groove going with the podcast. We would regularly have candidates that would do one of two things in the hiring process. They would reference the podcast as, I found you guys through this. And I really liked how you positioned digital marketing and how you sounded, your take. And one thing I remember hearing from several candidates was that they didn't find us through the podcast, but they really liked how we simplified the complex. And we made these typically complex digital marketing topics and strategies digestible for the everyman. And that's core to our culture here at Silverback, but I think is helpful in the broader digital marketing industry that's oftentimes just far too complex than it really needs to be.
There were a couple of Silverback clients that we interviewed on the podcast too. So I guess that would be kind of another benefit.
Deposits in our client relationships, I would put, they were right at the top, one of the benefits of launching our podcast. We are only lucky enough to do what we do at Silverback because our clients entrust us with their digital marketing programs and their budgets to be good stewards of it. So the Troop podcast presented a venue for us to both showcase the success stories and our expertise, subject matter expertise, but also provide a platform for our clients to showcase their business, highlight some upcoming initiatives, and I think most importantly for clients, it gave them a platform to really establish personal credibility to their peers, which frankly was the audience of Digital Marketing Troop.
You kind of hinted at it a little bit, the evolution of a podcast. A podcast can evolve over time. You talked about how in the early days of the Digital Marketing Troop, we would interview internal subject matter experts and technical experts. And then we branched out and started interviewing clients. We started interviewing influencers in the marketplace.
Just like any marketing program, the only constant, John, you probably will throw up when I say this, but the only constant is change. Change is what drives opportunity. And like any living, breathing thing, marketing programs need to change. Podcasts should evolve as your audience grows with you. Again, less on the measurable side from a revenue and marketing perspective, but certainly on that connected to the employer brand was employee morale and engagement. You probably recall this as the head of our podcast at the time. Our staff really enjoyed being on the podcast, being showcased. You can't put a price on having a really engaged employee base, particularly as we launched this throughout COVID. It wasn't early COVID, but it was mid-COVID, and employee engagement was and still is very critical. So you can't put a price on that. And we had a backlog, I recall, of team members looking to lend their voice and their expertise to the Troop podcast. And it allowed them to advance their personal brands. They could showcase their expertise and the little audiograms we were slicing and dicing out of the episodes, which kind of led to their growth of the personal brand and then Silverback's growth by connection, which was pretty cool. And last but certainly not least, this is rich coming from me because you tout this in your marketing for Red Cedar all the time. The podcast was really a foundational element of our editorial program. We developed content themes that you'll recall We mapped internal SMEs to those themes, success stories, prioritized the themes based on whether it was seasonality or a specific product or sales push or change in the industry. And the podcast was often the starting point for bringing those themes to life. So we recorded a meaningful conversation. We then sliced it and diced it into different content formats like transcript-fueled blogs, email nurture cadences, audiograms, as we talked about earlier. So full episodes being highlighted in sales messaging. The podcast spread the love through the organization on the marketing and sales enablement side in a big way.